Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond Insights. Taking risks is part of every entrepreneur's journey, but not all risks are created equal. In this episode, we'll explore how business owners can take smarter risks, the kind that fuel growth, not failure. And joining us, we have Ian Phillips, who is the head of partner sales at Xero in the UK. And Ian has seen firsthand how bold decisions backed by data and strategy can transform a business. And I'm very fortunate to be able to speak to you in the London office today.
Well, it's very good to have you here, Alex.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for being my guinea pig on our first official London interview.
Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So we've spoken a little bit about what you do here at Xero. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your background and maybe something that would surprise people about you.
Yeah, so I studied law at university, and like most good law graduates in the UK, I ended up in a sales career. So I've worked for various technology and kind of learning and development focused businesses, but found myself landing at Xero about 10 years ago. And Xero was kind of the first real scale up organization I had worked for. So it was really exciting, but also I think I was very privileged to join at the time that I did for a couple of reasons. One is because there were loads of opportunities to grow and to develop and to learn. But also I think that my kind of skill set and my mindset probably suited that kind of hyper growth environment where I knew that as we scaled, we had to build more process into what we were doing, but also that, being bold and taking risks at times was also a big part of the journey as well.
Cool.
In terms of something that would surprise people, so this I guess is something that I think if you're not in sales would surprise you about salespeople generally, and it's certainly true of me, which is that I'm not sort of massively or primarily motivated by money. I've interviewed lots and lots of salespeople over the years, and I often ask them, "What's the deal that you're most proud of doing?" And the answer is never the one that earned me the most commission or the biggest deal. It's always the one that had the most impact on the customer, or the one that I sort of started right from an embryonic stage and took it all the way through to a successful close. So, yeah, I think people probably have certain views about salespeople. They're not always true.
It's a sort of stereotype of the salesperson.
Exactly.
Ah, awesome. So if we think about our topic for today, obviously many business owners are quite cautious, especially in uncertain economic times. So what do you think, or why do you think that taking risks is such an important part of growth today?
Well, it's interesting, really, isn't it, that I guess most of the world's major economies have challenges with growth, and that is that's linked to productivity in the main. But the economies that are succeeding, and I'm thinking of the US economy, are ones where innovation and risk-taking is the norm. So I think there is an inherent link between risk-taking and successful growth, either like macroeconomically or for an individual business owner. So why that's particularly important now, I think, is this kind of crazy technological revolution that we are on the verge of, because what we're seeing from economies like the US is the answer to some of those productivity challenges lies in innovation around technology, or if you're not in the tech sector, adopting new technology. but you've got to be willing to take the risk to do that. You've got to
Yeah.
you've got to be willing to disrupt the way that you're working if you're going to adopt the technology in a way that's going to be meaningful and produce results.
And if you don't take that risk to try the new technology, what do you think will happen?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think if I relate that to the market that I know really well, which is accountants and bookkeepers, and the UK specifically, I think looking back 10 years ago, we probably expected to see more disruption than we have seen. And we probably expected the accountants and bookkeepers who adopted technology rapidly to kind of accelerate and outpace those that didn't. And I don't think that that's necessarily happened in the UK. I think that there's been a load of like regulatory change here that has gotten in the way of that. And actually, there's like plenty of work for everyone, no matter how efficiently they're working. But I genuinely believe that AI will change that. And I think that's probably true in most sectors. So, we've been saying that we're at an adopt or die moment for probably the last 12 years. But I think genuinely we are at an adopt or die moment, and that gap between the haves and the have-nots, the cloud-enabled businesses and the non-cloud enabled businesses, is really going to start to grow and bite over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In terms of your experience of working with accountants and their clients, how would you define a successful risk in business?
Yeah, wow, that's a good question, isn't it? I guess it's tempting to say it's the results, but I'm not sure that that's actually true, because I think I think inherently risk taking involves making some mistakes and learning from them. So I think for me, it's probably about the process that you go through in order to determine whether that risk was worth taking. I also think in business, you've got 3 sets of stakeholders. So if you're a firm of accountants, you've got the owner, or the owners, or the investors, depending on your model. Then you've got staff, and then you've got clients. And I think that all good decision making is based around determining whether the result of the decision you make is going to be balanced between those stakeholders. So if you make that judgment call and think that it is balanced and it's not skewing too far in the direction of one group of stakeholders or another, I'd almost say regardless of the results, it's probably a good risk to take, because I think you definitely, if you are taking the right level of risk, you will fail at times, and you will learn from those failures, but you will also succeed. So yeah, I think it's almost about the process that gets you there.
And really thinking through how you're making that decision.
Exactly. And I think that sometimes people mischaracterize risk taking as kind of throwing loads of ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks. I don't think that that's what risk taking really means. I think it's about making informed decisions based on risk that you have established is worth taking for the potential results that you might get.
Yeah, it's not just taking risks for risk's sake.
Exactly. Even in a small business, there are too many things at stake for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a moment in your own career where taking a calculated risk paid off for you, or where it taught you a valuable lesson?
Yeah, definitely. There have been a few occasions. One thing that springs to mind is when we were coming out of the pandemic in the sales team here in the UK, we had lots of people leave over a 6-month period. It was kind of an interesting time, because I think other younger software vendors were willing to probably pay over the odds to recruit salespeople, because there was talent shortage at the time, and we lost some people as a result. And at the time, I was reading a book called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, and it really got me thinking about the kind of people I wanted to hire to replace those people that left, and whether it was beneficial to me for them to have industry or domain knowledge, or whether it might be other things. And I sort of landed on this idea of rewriting all of our job descriptions, the interview process, the criteria by which we would make a decision, largely based around this concept of are they an ideal team player? And that meant that actually we took on some people that probably came from industries that were relatively alien to SaaS. And, whilst I think it's fair to say at times it may have taken longer to onboard them, and that's not easy, I think we ended up with a bunch of really good, committed people who are here for the long haul and bought into the vision that we have, rather than people that are just coasting from company to company within the same industry.
I think also that's a way to attract people who have been working in completely different environments, who maybe want a change and who can actually get excited about doing something new, working in a different industry. I think there's so much that you can learn on the job about the specific, like if you're at a software company like here, you can learn about the specific software, whatever it is. It's not like you have to know about software initially to sell software. That you can learn, but it's more about who you are as a person, I think is what you're saying, like how you work with other people.
Definitely. I think we kind of had hired a few people from desktop-based vendors in the same sector. And in reality, they knew their stuff, but they were just not able to operate at the pace that we tend to operate at. And it just wasn't a good fit culturally. So we had to learn from that lesson. And sometimes when you are in a situation where it seems like you've got quite a big problem, sometimes the answer is to take quite a big risk on the solution.
Yeah, makes sense. And thinking more about what a smart risk means, how can data, especially financial data or customer data, help business owners to make more informed decisions around risks that they're taking?
Yeah, so I think that data should be it should be a cornerstone in all decision making across businesses, for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, data is what can often prompt you to determine that you have a problem and you need to make a decision, and there are options that involve risk taking on the table. So I think one of the things that I think is super, super important for all business owners and for people running teams and departments like I am, is to have a cadence in place that allows you to review what those key metrics are on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whatever it is, whatever suits your rhythm as a business, so that you can make those interventions in the first place. But then once you have identified that you've got a problem to solve, I think that what data allows you to do is to remove some of the inbuilt biases that we have from the decision-making process. I think most of us have a bias towards our own ideas, which may not always be the right idea. And I think by focusing on the data, you allow yourself to kind of remove all of that noise and to zone in on the best idea.
Yeah, I definitely think we are mostly biased towards our own ideas. And being able to take a step back and say, okay, this is what I expected to see, but this is what actually happened. Now, what makes sense for us to do in response to that? I think that's really helpful.
Exactly.
And in your work with accounting firms, what role do you see accountants playing in helping their clients to manage or assess their data?
So I think the first thing is that they can force that cadence, which sounds like a minor thing, but it's so important, particularly with small business owners who are ultimately busy
Yeah.
running their business and working in their business. So I think if you can change your relationship with a client from once a year to once a quarter, once a month, or even once a week, and to inform that communication with data, that in of itself is going to make a huge difference. But then I guess it's the interpretation of the data. So not all business owners will be financially literate enough to really understand all of the numbers that are going in and out of their business. But I think the layer up from that is to help to inform decision making as well. So to play that role of advising that somebody should go faster or slower, or invest, or put some money aside for their tax bill, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think the role of the accountant should be really critical. However, I would say that not all business owners know that kind of level of service is available from their accountant, and I think accountants can sometimes downplay the extent to which business owners might be interested in receiving that level of service as well.
I think oftentimes accountants will assume, well, if my client hasn't asked me for the service, they probably don't want it, without thinking they maybe just didn't even consider that was an option.
Yeah,
But something that could help them, that they could get from their accountant.
Well, absolutely, and without getting too kind of product focused, I think that is the amazing thing about Sift and Xero coming together, because there are opportunities now to drip feed some of that information and to use it as a marketing hook to figure out who is and who is not interested, without it necessarily costing the accountant lots of money. And then they can almost start to build a sales funnel where they can understand, rather than projecting interest or non-interest on their clients, to actually test that level of interest, which I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, very cool. Not to promote our own products too much, but I do think that's very cool. If we think about businesses taking risks, obviously a small business taking a risk is very different from a bigger business. Do you think that small businesses are at a disadvantage or at an advantage? How do you see that compared to bigger businesses?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. I think clearly small businesses are more agile. So I think it is easier to take a risk, or easier to make the decision to take a risk. They are less tied up in red tape. However, one of the reasons that I have absolute admiration for anybody that decides to set up on their own and to start a business is that involves a degree of jeopardy that I don't think exists within big business, because I think big business has a load more inbuilt resilience. So depending on the size of the risk, I think small businesses have an advantage in that they can move much more quickly, but bigger businesses can absorb more shock when something goes wrong.
Yes, I think the repercussions, if it goes badly for a small business, will be far greater than for a bigger business.
Exactly.
And if we think about tools or mindset when you're preparing for making a big and risky decision, what groundwork do you think that a business or a business owner should take to minimize the downside?
Yeah, and I think, as we've already said, it's important to make sure that your risk taking is calculated. I was recently introduced to a framework, consulting framework called MISI, which stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. And the reason I like that framework is, I think, going back to that concept of bias, it can be tempting to kind of think that you've landed on what a problem is and what you think the solution is, without necessarily considering all of the options and all of the ramifications of that decision. And I think that concept of mutually exclusive allows you to start to make sense of your ideas and to sort them into piles so that you can not start with a list of 100 different problems to solve or 100 different answers to problems. But then the collectively exhaustive bit does make sure that you have kind of gone through that thought process of making sure, I have considered everything, and actually this is the problem that's most meaningful, or this is the solution that's going to have the biggest impact. So I think that's a really nice framework. But of course, as we have already said, those hypotheses need to be tested by data, and you do need to, where you can, make sure that you're backing up your decisions with solid data as well.
And not just sort of gut feeling.
Exactly.
Moving from gut feeling to other sort of general feelings. I know a lot of business owners obviously fear failure. So I wanted to know, what is your view on failing fast versus failing smart, and what do these ideas mean?
Yes. Yeah. I think failing fast has become quite a popular concept in recent times. I think that there's a fallacy there to this idea that you should. I guess it almost implies that you should deliberately drive the car off of the cliff, right? And not really be considered in your decision making. And I think, risk taking doesn't have to be that. I think risk taking should be informed, and it should be smart. So I think, failing fast is a bit of a fallacy, whereas failing smart, if you can take a risk, but at the time feel like it was the right decision.
Yes.
And then subsequently it turns out to have not been the right decision. I think you can. I think you can sleep at night with that. But if you're reckless with your decision making, I think there's too much at stake, and you shouldn't really play with that.
Yeah, I think there's often this idea, if you want your business to be moving forward fast, that you must iterate and reiterate, and you must keep going, and you mustn't be worried about potential failure, but that I think it's still possible to do that while also being calculated in the decisions that you're making.
I agree. I think, if anything, people are still too scared of failure and too scared of risk. But I do understand why. I do understand that even just starting up a business is a big risk. So you've already taken one big risk by being in the game in the first place, and then feeling like you could throw it all away with one decision is scary stuff. So I understand it, but I do think that it's vital if you're going to succeed and grow.
Oh, absolutely. And how do you see tech and modern accounting tools supporting better risk taking?
I think that in my experience, there are lots of leaders within accountancy, especially, who still very much work in their firm rather than on it. So I think that there's kind of like this bigger picture piece of the technology, if implemented properly, freeing them up to actually think about how they want to run their firm, how they want to serve their clients. And I think in many cases we haven't quite got there yet, and we probably need to get there pretty quickly if accountants are going to benefit from the changes in technology that are rapidly being sent in our direction. But then I guess more specifically, it is at a client level having the time and the data to deliver a service that pushes the client up your value chain. So you can charge them more, but for good reason, because you are offering a service that helps them to be more successful.
Yeah. And I think offering them something that can also help save them time and cause them hopefully a little bit less stress within their business.
Yeah, and I guess we in the accountancy profession, at times it can be tempting to kind of link value to time, but actually saving time is often pretty near the top of business owners' priority list. So if you can save them time, they probably don't care how much time you're spending on the work that you're doing for them, because you are providing them a load of value.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different way of thinking about how you price your services, how you value your services. Instead of focusing on how long it's taken you to do something, you think, well, I have all these years of experience. I have these great tools now. This can actually save me time and I can provide more. And so, yeah, you rethink how you position that.
Yeah, and the flip side of that, of course, is if you are only thinking of value in terms of time, there is no incentive for you to become more efficient, more productive, and to fuel your growth that way.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if you could share some stories from your own experience, maybe a story from a partner or a customer who you saw take a big risk, and what made it work out for them or maybe not work out for them.
Yeah, so funnily enough, I bumped into somebody, I won't name him in case he doesn't want me to, but he runs a firm down in Cornwall, and I've got huge admiration for him because he took a huge risk starting the firm in the first place and grew incredibly quickly. But more recently, I had a conversation with him about how he's kind of tackling some of the talent shortage challenges that he has. And he has actually taken the risk of employing a couple of people as client success managers who are not accountants. Funnily enough, I had posted about this topic on LinkedIn, and the response was mixed, to say the least. I think a lot of people felt, you shouldn't be working in a firm of accountants if you don't have any experience whatsoever. But he had taken that risk, and he was absolutely glowing about how they were performing and the service that they can deliver to clients that frees up more technical people to do more technical work. So I thought that was like a fabulous example of someone being quite innovative in a profession that at times can be a little bit cautious.
Very cool. I think, yeah, this is the first time I've really heard of an accounting firm hiring people who are not accountants, but I think it makes so much sense, especially in like a client-facing role. You want someone who's good with people, who has that set of skills. It's not to say that accountants don't generally have that, but I think that sometimes people may be like very technically proficient, but not always so good at talking to people. So I think it's good, yeah, to try and give those people an opportunity. And that is a big risk to take, but it sounds like it's paying off.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting debate, because clearly if you are advising a business owner to do something, then you need to have the qualifications and the experience to back that up. But equally, I feel like good account managers or salespeople, whatever you want to call them, the primary skill set is to take the complex and to articulate it in a way that the customer is going to understand. And I think that the risk of putting somebody that's too technical in front of a customer, particularly if they're making a decision about whether to kind of place their business with you or not, is that they don't do that and they're bamboozled and they're embarrassed and they don't want to ask any questions. So I can definitely see advantages, but I'm sure it probably wouldn't work for everyone as well.
Yeah, if anyone has any comments that you want to post on this episode, let us know. What do you think of this? What are some early warning signs that a risk isn't paying off? What should leaders know about these? And what do you do in a situation where you realize, okay, I made the wrong decision here?
Yes, I this is where I quite like the concept of OKRs, so objective and key results. So if you have kind of set out at the start of the year or whatever period that you're talking about, these are the things that I'm working on. In and amongst that, there will of course be some decisions that involve taking on some risk, but that forces you again, if you have the right cadence, to start to monitor progress. It's always really important that you think about lead and lag indicators. So keeping an eye on those lead indicators, and when the light starts flashing amber or red, to have a conversation about it and to determine, is this something that just isn't working yet but is showing green shoots, or is it something that has been impacted either by external factors or one of these other OKRs that we're working on? Because if you don't track them alongside each other, then you perhaps fail to spot that sometimes, running a business can be like this big game of whack-a-mole where you get rid of one problem and you create another. But ultimately, one of the biggest and most important risks that you can take is to decide to close something down if it really isn't working. And I think it's important for everyone to track stuff and to make sure they leave that option open for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. We've spoken a lot about data and using data to inform your decisions. At what point does intuition come into the picture?
Yeah.
And like, how do you balance your intuition or your sort of gut feeling with data as a business owner? Is it something that you think can come into the picture, or do you think data is the only thing to focus on?
So our CEO, Sukhinder, I have heard her talking about making decisions based on gut data. So often you will come up with an idea based on a gut feeling, and then you need to use data to test it. But ultimately, there is likely to still be some ambiguity, and the risk sometimes is to say, I'm going to plow on and go with my gut anyway.
Yeah.
But as I said before, where I almost think data is more important is before that process, and having the reviews in place for your key performance indicators to establish that a problem needs to be solved or a decision needs to be made in the first place. So yeah, maybe I need to replace gut data gut with data gut data gut.
Just switch the order around. It makes sense. If you know where your problem areas are, then you can apply your gut or whatever your feeling is, your years of experience, to how to solve that problem, and then dive into the data again.
Exactly.
And if you had to summarize it, what do you think is the difference between a risk that will break a business and a risk that could build a business?
I think it comes back to that stakeholder model that I talked about. I think if you take a risk that leans too hard in one direction, so towards a particular group of stakeholders, so if you put up your prices too high to try to increase your profitability to make sure that the owners are happy, or if you go too far in offering your employees way too much flexibility so that they take advantage of that. I think those are the kind of risks that can break a business, because they're really, like, reputationally quite difficult to come back from. So I would say the contrast of that is to make risks that balance all three of those stakeholders. You would never do this perfectly, and there will definitely be times that you find that, with the benefit of hindsight, you have perhaps made a decision that focused a little bit too much on your clients at the expense of your staff or your profitability or whatever. But I think ultimately having that kind of framework in your head when you're making these decisions is what will inform whether the risk is gonna build or damage your business.
Oh, makes sense. We have a tradition on the podcast where we end with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So you're ready to answer with whatever comes into your head. So the first one is, what's your favorite software besides Swift and Xero, obviously?
Okay. Gemini. It literally saves me half a day a week, I'd say.
Amazing. Best book you've read recently or best podcast you've listened to?
So recently, I really enjoy listening to the Rest is Money podcast, which is hosted by Robert Peston and Stephen McGovern, and they often have very interesting economists on there expressing their opinions about global trends and UK-based trends. Very interesting.
So we'll link that underneath the podcast. What's the most important lesson you've learned about building a business?
That's a big question, but I have an answer because I've been asked this quite a few times, having been here for 10 years. I think the biggest lesson I have learned is to understand the need to alter the balance between speed and quality of execution. When you're an early stage startup, scale up, speed is probably more important than quality. But as you grow, in order to scale, quality becomes more important. So sometimes you have to pause, take a moment, and figure out, am I doing this as well as I should be?
Yeah, very good. One final question. If somebody is zoned out for most of the podcast and they only took away one thing from our discussion, what would you want that to be?
The one thing is build a cadence for reviewing your KPIs, probably on a weekly basis, at least on a monthly basis. So if you're a small business owner, that's what you need to ask your accountant for. If you're an accountant, that is the huge value that you can provide to a load of your clients.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ian. That is our podcast for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast. Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now. And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast. That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.